So, continuing on our essential question, we are moving on to Jackson. Now, time wise, these things do not seem apart, but they are together because it's all about like how the idea of democracy has like become bigger. So, Unit 3, Lesson 3, we are looking at the age of Jackson. Our unit essential question: in what ways did the idea of democracy change in the United States over time? As I said, Jackson is going to be president much longer after Jefferson. We're talking about almost 30 years. But his election is significant because it marks a time where the election grows. So, our objectives that we're looking at today: we can explain how the election of 1828 was the first modern election and how it was controversial. We can examine how the election of 1828 expanded who was eligible for voting and how it changed the political atmosphere of Washington, D.C. We can explain how Jackson's presidency dealt with several issues through his 2 terms. And lastly, most importantly, I want us to look at the Trail of Tears and its impact on Native Americans east of the Mississippi River. So I want you to take a minute to pause this video and look at the photo that you see here. What is happening? What do you notice? This is inaugural day, 1828. How might this look different from images that we've seen in history before? So pause the video and look at that now. So now let's compare voting requirements, meaning what did you need to do or who did you need to be to vote in the early 19th century? So we're talking about the 1800s. So on the left-hand side, you have voting rights east of the Mississippi. Remember, this is the land that we gained from the American Revolution. So you see that everything in green, right? You had to own property to vote. Most people do not own property. So you're looking at a very, very, very small selected group of people on the left hand side that are eligible to vote. To own property means that you have a lot of wealth. So in 1800, when Jefferson's elected, the people that are voting are the people that are very rich. Transition that to the right hand side in 1830, where now most states by this point have moved on to, hey, as long as you pay taxes, you're able to vote. And then you can also see the rise of the yellow, where the yellow is, as long as you're a white man, you can vote. It doesn't matter if you pay taxes, it doesn't matter whatever. So you start to see the idea of that expand as well. And so you can see what that causes. It causes a large voter turnout from 1824, and then slowly over time it builds. So why increase democratization? White male suffrage increases. Unfortunately, it's a fact that at this time it's only going to be white males that can vote, but not not every white male can vote until 1820s, and we'll start to see the number of those increase. We start to see political parties come about again. Remember from our last lesson that the Democratic Republicans under Jefferson pretty much control who can vote, who can do what. And then as we get into 1824, we start to see the emergence of a new political party. Voters also choose their presidential electors. We see what is known as a spoils system. So that's where if the state is in charge of decisions, the state is going to be in charge of who represents what. And then we also see a rise of third parties. 1828 becomes kind of known as the first modern day election, where we have popular campaigning, parades, rallies, floats, signs, things like that, and the two-party system that returns. One of the things that's also happening is the center of population in the country begins to move west, as you can see from the map here. In 1790, one of the most populous areas was south of Philadelphia. And then as the country grows, the population center moves slowly west. So by the time we get to the 1800s, the time we're talking about now, it's west of the Mississippi, or it's moving towards west of the Mississippi. But you can just kind of see how the country is slowly expanding and looking at this map. So the election of 1828 was an extremely important election. The big idea is the election highlighted a lot of changes. You have John Quincy Adams. John Quincy Adams is the son of John Adams, the second president. He had served as Secretary of State prior to this. And then we have Andrew Jackson, who is a former general from the War of 1812, very popular, very well known. This is going to become the first presidential election that receives national attention. Voter turnout doubles because of the expanding of the ideas of who can vote. In the election of 1824, Jackson had gotten beaten out by John Quincy Adams in what he believed to be a corrupt bargain, a bargain between the House of Representatives and John Quincy Adams, where he believes that the election was stolen from him. So when we get to the election of 1828, his supporters use this to his advantage. So who is this new Jackson coalition? It's people that have not voted before. It's people that are on the frontier, people out west, the farmers, state politicians, immigrants that are beginning to move to the United States. And he kind of uses that to his advantage, and that he says he's a common man. He's actually the first president to be elected that's not somebody of a name, if that makes sense. So what he kind of builds is he uses that, as I said, to his advantage, where he is the common man. He distrusts the Eastern establishment. He distrusts monopolies, special privilege. So if you're just a regular person, you love Jackson because he's telling you that everything you thought about the Eastern people and the government, it's true, and I don't like them. His heart and soul was with the plain folk, he would say. He believed that the common man was capable of uncommon achievements. So ultimately, what ends up happening when you look at the electoral map, and this is what we look at when we look at who ran for president, Jackson defeats John Quincy Adams in a very, very convincing fashion. But I want you to focus on how this map shows you like who Jackson's supporters are. It's going to be everyone that falls into that Southern elite, Westerners, frontiersmen. So what Jackson's administration is qualified as is it is, hey, I'm here, my friend should be here too. So he filled his government positions with his supporters. We learned in the lesson about Washington about a cabinet and members that would tell the president what to do. Jackson had those people, but then he also kept his friends around. So he had what was called a kitchen cabinet. It was his unofficial advisors, the people that he just wanted to have in the room at the time. One of the things that Jackson's going to become known for, and this is a question on your guided notes, is his war with the bank. The United States at this time had a Bank of the United States. We're not talking about Bank of America here. That is a private corporation, but the Bank of the United States was also privately owned. But the federal government put its trust within the Bank of the United States and made deposits with it. So Jackson believed that the bank only served wealthy people. Again, those aren't the people he represents. He also believes that the Constitution did not give any power to have that bank. The president of the bank was a man named Nicholas Biddle. Biddle was seen as an arrogant man. This also contributed to the negative image of the bank. So as we look here, the bank debate comes between Nicholas Biddle and President Jackson. So the opposition to the bank was an opposition between soft paper money and hard money. Soft money is your paper money, right? So state bankers felt that it restrained from their banks from issuing banknotes freely. This helped support economic growth and speculation. However, a lot of people that were in finance believed that like paper money was not real. Like we needed the hard coin specie like gold, silver. That was the only safe currency. And they did not like any bank that issued notes. They were very suspicious of expansion and speculation. So what ends up happening is the government has to put forward a bill re-pushing the bank forward. Jackson vetoes this bill, which means he says, nope, don't like it, get rid of it. So the charter expires and the bank goes bankrupt. So let's look at this political cartoon from the time where you see Jackson holding the veto in his hand, and he is getting rid of the demons that exist. So Jackson, there's a lot of really great political cartoons from this era where he was kind of a king. People were like, this is not what a president is supposed to look like. And he did not care. So, lastly, one of the most significant things about Jackson, let's look at this quote. I saw the helpless Cherokees arrested and dragged from their homes and driven at the bayonet point into the stockades. And in the chill of a drizzling rain on an October morning, I saw them loaded like cattle or sheep into 645 wagons and started towards the west. On the morning of November the 17th, we encountered a terrific sleet and snowstorm with freezing temperatures. And from that day until we reached the end of the fateful journey, on March the 26th, 1839, the sufferings of the Cherokees were awful. The trail of the exiles was a trail of death. They had to sleep in the wagons and on the ground without fire, and I have known as many of 22 of them to die in one night of pneumonia due to ill treatment, cold, and exposure. So, what this is describing is what becomes the Indian Removal Act under Jackson. Was this Jackson's goal? In 1830, the Indian Removal Act under his presidency is passed. Basically, what it is people east of the Mississippi wanted land that was still owned by Native American tribes. There were still some pretty significant Native American tribes that were living east of the Mississippi under the United States government land. So the Indian Removal Act said, we got to get them out. They forced their resettlement. The Cherokee in particular had done everything the United States had wanted them to do. They assimilated, they became Christians. Some of them were slave owners. They dressed like Americans, like they did everything they wanted us to do. And in the end, it was not okay. So they fought and said, we are going to fight this in court. You can't kick us out of our land. This is where we've been for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. So there were two court cases in the Cherokee Nation versus the state of Georgia. The court ruled in their favor that they're a domestic dependent nation. Any laws that Georgia had done, the courts said, nope, you're okay. They take it all the way to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court sides with the Cherokee again. White people do not need a license to be on Native American lands. Jackson looks at the court ruling where they said the Cherokee are right, we cannot kick them out. And he says, John Marshall, who's the chief of the Supreme Court, says he's made a decision, now let him enforce it, which is kind of a joke because it's Jackson's job to enforce the law, not the Supreme Court. So Jackson goes forward with the Indian removal. Here is a map of the Cherokee Nation and where it lies. Okay, so it kind of spreads from Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee, and North Carolina. One of the big things also is gold is found. So that leads to why the white Americans want to go there. But the government decides to remove them. And they create what is known as the Indian Territory, which is today where the state of Oklahoma is located. So they say, we're going to take every Indian that is east of the Mississippi, so the Cherokee, the Creek, the Seminole, Choctaw, Chickasaw, and we are going to force them into this new territory and into this new land. So out of their ancestral homelands, they move them. And what you see there in the red line, okay, becomes known as the Trail of Tears. These people are forcibly sent north during wintertime, as we saw in the quote. Many of them die. I believe 25% of the people that are sent on the Trail of Tears perish. You're going to watch an Edpuzzle on the Trail of Tears because it's just a really heartbreaking moment for the American history, American psyche, who we are.